What's up guys, it's Burning Rubber here. So today we're going to be doing some preventative maintenance on the A4B9. So I'm going to be changing the oil here. The manual says that we should be changing the oil about every 10,000 miles. However, a good friend of mine who works a lot with German cars says that we should go no further than every 5,000 miles, which is what I'm going to be doing from now on. So looking at some prices from a dealership, this oil change would cost me about $95, and I think I could do better on my own. So here we have some of the equipment that we'll be using. Here we have an oil pump extractor. So what it does is you take this tube, insert it into this little area right here, and you pump out the oil. This is done very often on any sort of German cars, especially the newer ones. Right here we have a total of 10 quarts of 0W-40 oil. And you'll notice that Castrol is what Audi prefers. You can even see that on the location of where you pour the oil. The cap specifies to use Castrol. And so one of the things that Audi does is they do want you to use their oil and have their services. So they say that the VW 50200-505- or I guess 00 is what they prefer. However, this oil is also compatible if you're going to be doing this on your own. Up next we have the filter. Very simple. I know on a lot of German cars changing the oil is a big hassle with just where the location of the filter is. But on the A4B9 we have the filter conveniently placed right as close to the technician as possible. Now let's talk about the prices of how much this all costs. So I purchased the oil extractor pump on eBay for about $35. The oil was purchased from Walmart for $22 for 5 quarts. And then finally the filter I bought in bulk on eBay for $69, and that was 9 filters. And so overall we're going to be doing a quick analysis as to how much this is all going to cost and compare it against what the dealership would have charged me. One thing to note is this car takes about 5.5 quarts and that equates to about 5.2 or so liters. One of the cool things about using the pump to extract it is you don't have to be lifting it on jacks or any sort of messiness like that. The car is very low. I think it's about 5 inches off the ground. So using any sort of lifting mechanism is a little bit of a hassle since it's just so low and you have to get creative there. So this will be my first time using the pump to do an oil change, and I'm kind of excited to see how easy it is or how hard it is to change, and we'll kind of walk you guys through how it's done. So the very first step in doing all this is we're going to be taking off this plastic cover over the engine. The important thing to note is that you want to pull directly up, not towards you or away from you. Up next, there's a little plug right here, which is where your tube will be inserted. And to take this off, you want to pull up as you take a small flat head screwdriver and pinch it underneath. Up next, we're going to be taking the oil pump extractor and connecting it so we have the tube fed into the car. So I'm just going to plug this in like that. And so we have a vacuum seal here. And then it looks like this tube won't be long enough to reach to the very bottom of the oil pan. So we're going to do a little bit of a modification and use another tube to lengthen it. Now we just feed it into here. And I can feel it's not going anymore. And so one thing to know is on this pump specifically, you have little indicator lines to show you how much fluid you have inside of its container. So we're going to be looking for about 5-ish liters. We might have to be pumping multiple times to get it all. So. Now before actually pumping it out, we're going to take off the cover to allow it to get some ventilation. And now we're just going to give it a few pumps. It is taking a little bit longer than what I expected, but I think the diameter of the tube going into the oil pan is very small, and that's what's causing it to take some time. One of the things also worth noting is that before you perform an oil change on a car where you're extracting the oil from the top, you want to make sure the engine's a little bit warm. That way the oil is a little bit more fluid-like. It's also important to note that you don't want the engine to be too hot, because the oil could damage the tubes if it's very hot. But I was grabbing the oil from Walmart this morning a few hours ago, and so the engine is still fairly warm and good for this job. Drive it around a block or so, or if you just want to let it running maybe for 5 to 7 minutes. So instead of having the car parked towards the garage, we've decided to park it away. That way the driveway has a bit of a grade, and so it would ensure that all the oil is towards where the tubes are for extraction. Otherwise, I don't think we would have been able to extract all the oil. So we got about 3.75 liters extracted out of the engine. And that equates to about 4 quarts, which is a little bit lower than what I expected. However, a few things to know is that with Audis, they do tend to burn oil, especially when you're in stop and go traffic, which is what my daily commute looks like. So now we're just gonna go ahead and start off with taking out the filter. So the socket here is a 32 millimeter. I didn't have one available, so we're gonna be using this variable wrench, and just gonna make sure that's tight, and then so before removing it all the way, we're just going to make sure that the vacuum seal is broken. That way more oil could come down from it. Let's see if I could get this. So now we just want to leave this for a few minutes or so, maybe like 30 seconds, just to ensure that the oil is dripping from the filter and back into the engine. Okay. Surprisingly, not as messy as I expected. You can see we're getting a little bit more from when we took out the filter. That was expected. So it looked like altogether we got about 4.25 quarts of oil out. And now let's go ahead and replace the filter and add in the new oil. We could probably also take out the extraction tube. Won't be needing that anymore. Okay, let's go ahead and lift this guy up. That's the paper filter that they have. This guy just pulls right out. Okay, go ahead and set it down on the rag. We can install the new one. Looks like. And then we want to remove this rubber gasket, which I have a screwdriver. We could use that. Pinch it and lift. Next. It's also important to make sure that you have the O-ring lubricated with some fresh oil to make sure you have a proper seal. So we're just gonna tilt the can a little bit, get some on your finger, and just apply some oil all the way around. So up next, we got the new filter in. We're just gonna put it in. It does specify to torque it down to 25 Newton meters, plus or minus 5 Newton meters. However, we don't have a torque wrench available for us. So we'll just hand tight as much as we can and then use the variable wrench to do any remaining work. About there is where it feels pretty snug. Gonna clean up that area. Okay. So now up next, we're gonna go ahead and pour in the new oil. Up next, we're gonna close the little port that allowed us to put the extraction tube in. Just clips in like that. And now let's go ahead and pour in some fresh oil. Now, one thing to note with this car is that you have before you put that in, you have this little piece of plastic which is pretty much right where your cap ends, and so you want to make sure to pour fairly slow and take little breaks so that you don't overfill anything. We've just now put about 4 quarts, even though we're not at the 5.5 that the manufacturer suggests. We're gonna verify to see what level the oil is at, and to do that we'll have to start the car, run the engine for a few minutes, and have it sense how much oil is in there. So we may have to add a little bit more, but let's take a look now. So now that we've added the new oil, we want to measure it, and to do so we have to make sure that the car is on level ground. So I went ahead and I parked it on the street, and to do so we just hit the start ignition and then head on over to vehicle. Use the wheel to go to the left, and here we have the oil level is okay. Using the MMI, we're going to head on over to the vehicle. Use a wheel to turn left. Service and checks. And so you could see here for the service intervals, we want to reset the oil change interval. And it's going to ask us, do we really want to do that? Yes, we do. And it's been reset. So now it's going to remind us, now in this case, it's going to remind us within the next 10,000 miles or 365 days. But as I said earlier, it's much better to change your oil every 5,000 miles, just because it is a German car, and to make sure the engine lasts as long as possible, you want to have those more frequent oil changes. So thanks for watching, guys. There'll be some more videos for some preventative maintenance on this car. Subscribe, like, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time.